Thank you so much for introduction. And let me introduce myself, a little bit more, so I am a MBSE transformation lead, but in general, I spent, most of my career, at No Magic, before the so acquired in the core team, building this product as an analyst, product owner, and now senior solution architect, working here, consulting clients in the US mostly. And a lot of presentations to the clients, a lot of solutions, in those years, maybe 40 plus, papers, tutorials. I have also certificates in the system engineering from INCOSE and OMG, because they are standardization organization, very good certificates provided, as a proof of knowledge, of the model-based part. And yeah, and I was co-author for the Magic Grid Book of Knowledge, and also major review in the recent book by Bruce Douglas for Agile MBSE, which is also amazing book, on the methodology actually. And we also have 160 now members in our community for systems simulation with SysML, and YouTube channel would be MBSE execution. So quite a lot knowing the system engineering, this kind of not everyone is doing and interested in. But it's getting better, that's for sure, what we see here. A lot of new people are coming to the system engineering domain. So I wanted to start with this saying from the Chris Schreiber's that system engineering is beyond simply capturing system engineering design. It's to enable a better way of engineering systems, and that's the goal, in general, from what we do. So today we want to speak about short just introduction to the system modeling and simulation in SysML with Cameo, and CATIA Magic is the new name of this portfolio, the same pretty much almost portfolio. And then user needs analysis with the use case method and how that can be simulated, actually executed. And then the requirements compliance analysis, how here we can simulate, to do the requirements compliance during more analytical approach, on the model, than just, capturing the design of the system. And then what's next, because there are big things coming in this area. And kind of very nice that actually we saw, from ANSYS, demonstration, they are pretty much thinking in the same way as we do, that's why I can see that it's very good collaboration, Same, I guess, Capella also, just more on analysis side, this presentation. So that's why I mentioned the ANSYS. So introduction to system model simulation in SysML. So why in general system engineering? And we see the same, directions, I could say, the interest in software and electric is not without reason, It is because of the complexity of the systems we see that new people are coming to system engineering and from new domains like healthcare, right? And this is not because of the mechanical side, but because of the electrical and especially software side of the system. So definitely everywhere things get better, but in the software, it is the like 90% of the things gets much more software intense, So it's definitely the future for the systems, right? And those cyber components, they get cheaper, right? And we have tons of sensors. For example, like here we have, vehicle, right? But just recently discovered that new Mercedes, this electric one has 350 sensors, around the car. So, I mean, like, who cares about sensors? We can have cameras, I mean, but, like that's the completely different, approach when we think, like before how it was and now how it is. Definitely software centric, everything is software based. Features are no longer mechanical, they are software based. you have your phone, it should be connected to your devices, medical devices, right? You should see and get updates for those devices and so on, you know, through the phone. Everything should be like that, you know. And artificial intelligence comes, right? There are some predictions that, you know, like currently there are some trends, right? But the future trend will be AI, you know, and if company is not in AI, it will not be in the business, you know, that's like 5-10 years in the future. So pretty much like that, you know. And then that to support that, you know, so short time to market, you know, it's crazy short, you know, like for software, it's just days, and, you know, like new update of the software can come, you know, nightly, you know, and then, you know, you get like completely new build, which is like new code base and so on, you know, just like nightly for million users. So very short time to market, really. So now from the simulation perspective, there are a few ways, you know, you can, you know, reach maturity of model-based system engineering. From simulation side is pretty much, you know, when we have those ad hoc models, you know, like people say like, okay, we have like models in the company, you know, do we do MBSE? Yes, you do MBSE, but, you know, those models are just disconnected, right? Like humans are building them, you know, from scratch. Then when we model system as requirements, you know, in SysML or Capella, you know, Arcadia method, then we get, you know, like descriptive model of the system, right? So then we can talk about the system, you know, interfaces, functions, connections between components, characteristics. Then we could actually execute that if the model is executable like we have with SysML. That would prove that system works as we expected, at least the logic was modeled as we expected. Then we can integrate those models which we had before disintegrated, and then we can get, you know, like quickly the what-if analysis, and then on the top, we can do actually optimization and workflow automation, which we get like with ANSYS Model Center, which is like to integrate tools, as you saw, you know, in the demo. And that's the highest maturity level from simulation side on the MBSE maturity. Not necessarily that you need to jump, you know, to the highest one. Actually, the most value actually is in modeling part, you know, because you know, we speak the same language. When we do the modeling, we can express the, you know, ideas and have it formally written, you know, instead of just text-based, you know. And this one is just like later in the day when you already know how to model your system. Otherwise, there's nowhere to tie those simulation models. So now on the simulation side, you know, SysML can be executed because of multiple standards behind, like FUML for activities and state machine simulation standards, and precise state semantic OMG OMG standard for state simulation, action scripts, parametric simulation, sequence diagram simulation, and then to connect them, you know, so that's why simulation toolkit is called, you know, as a toolkit, because we could connect those standards together and make them even replaceable with new version, better executable evaluators, and run everything as a single system simulation, you know, based on SysML rules. And that's pretty much the framework for simulation, and it supports multiple other capabilities like debugging and visualization, charts, user interface, import, export capabilities, running FMIs, integrating with other tools, MATLAB, and so. From validation verification perspective, which is quite critical in general, because for the system engineering part, why we run those models to see that they work as expected, right? To do some analysis, but there are also analytical tools for that, right? Analysis tools, but from validation verification, so we support, you know, requirements, compliance analysis, as we will see today. We support model-based testing, as you can check, you know, on YouTube channels. Today we'll not cover this topic because it's quite, you know, time-consuming, and you can execute test cases in multiple diagrams, like sequence diagram, activity, and so. There is again integration capabilities, because SysML, as you know, is not in isolation, right? So it integrates with the analysis tools, integrates with design tools, and through simulation we can achieve, you know, co-simulation capabilities, which we could run two tools at the same time, you know, seeing how that interact together. But that's kind of more advanced capability than just pure SysML execution, as we still see today. So first thing first, you know, so when we build a model, you can, without any kind of, you know, level of, you know, advanced inputs into the model, just execute whatever is in the model. You can have just one use case, you can run it. If you have just one state in the state machine, you can already execute that model. You know, interpreters don't need to compile some code level details in the model to run it. And why to do it is because we can validate the logic. We can run and see that the actual behavior which we created works as expected. And that could be single diagram, right? It could be activity workflow, could be state machine, could be sequence diagram. You know, if you describe it, you can demonstrate it, or just test by yourself, you know, that it works as expected. You know, so that's like animation part. That's like easiest way to do, and it just button click, right? Nothing more. Then with some extra data and some extra, you know, inputs, we can do analysis. That could be duration analysis, Monte Carlo analysis, trade studies, user interface, which would show those analysis. And why we would do it? Because, you know, we already have the model with the data, so why not to capture something which is like not hard at all, you know, at that level of fidelity as the model supports, right? So not going to the more design activities than actual system architecture activities. So now let's go to the first step, and we'll talk about user needs analysis. This user needs can come from Excel, could come, you know, from some other requirement management tools. We have integration with multiple of them. You know, we work on, for example, Polarion integration. We have Doors integration for many years with most of our clients from DoD. We use this integration, which is like one of the most successful integrations in general in the, you know, our integration portfolio. And you can synchronize requirements, and then when you get them in the model, you know, the model has a lot of expressiveness, how those requirements would link to the model. You know, do they verify, do they satisfy the requirements, that you know, do we have to like derive from one level of requirements to another level of requirements? So you can see here we have satisfy by, you know, the system architecture satisfies those requirements. And what I wanted to talk here on the user level analysis, user needs analysis, is that we get user needs and then we pretty much model them in the use cases, in the context where the system is used, like black box, and what are the measures of effectiveness system has based on the user needs. So pretty much those three perspectives. And, you know, like from this use case perspective, we could already apply, you know, system model simulation and run those use cases. So now this use case method is a kind of generic one. It's not very specific for SysML. Same in UML, but also as you could check, you know, for example, from Bruce Douglas' Agile MBSE cookbook, this method is very well aligned to Agile, you know, methodologies, and it's kind of one of the good ways to actually do Agile, you know, in the model-based system engineering. And he has those Learn and lunch and learn sessions currently going, you know, you can find on YouTube, actually, if you will search, you know, amazing content really. So nothing, you know, alt style here. So let me go to the demo now. I will go to this use case model. I see some chat question. So there's one question, maybe let's try to answer. Executing different system configurations using instance models in SysML simulation toolkit site. Are we talking about variation points, product line engineering? Will this be default part of SysML do capability? Yeah, so nothing not working in SysML 1 from instance side, right? So you can capture an instance, you know, alternative system configurations. So that's actually a dedicated way to capture them, it's part of the standard, right? So you have generalization, you have multiplicity, but that is on definition, right? And when you want to save at object level, so instance is that object level, which allows you to save it and then run that on object level, because if you run the block diagram, right, block structure, right? So this runs with the default values. If you run instance, that would enter those instances into the default values from that configuration, and you can have alternative those configurations. From PLE side, I don't know really about SysML version 2 on PLE side. We do have introduced PLE model-based PLE modeling, where you can have like instances, saving system configuration to manage that as the feature model. It's not very complicated thing at all, but it was not part of SysML. I'm not sure will it be part of SysML too, but kind of you can see how that works out of the box already. If you will download this plugin MBPLE from the resource manager, no cost plugin, product line engineering, as you can see here. But what we think about is actually to simulate that, to use the PLE, product line engineering variants, to run trade studies, because that's the most powerful way to capture the alternatives. You can filter the model, cut it, change it completely. With PLE, it's no limitation pretty much on any level of the model, in the diagram. And then to use it for the trade study, it would mean that, same model could exercise completely alternative architectures, would be the most powerful trade studies, possible, from the alternative architectures perspective. So yeah, so this plugin, it works out of the box as it should be, but for trade studies, for simulation, is not used. Would be nice to see it working in that area. And there is plans for that, in the roadmap already. I don't remember which version, but definitely not the next, but maybe next after version after. Okay, so here we have use cases. As you can see here, there is some mistake here, for example, and I'm not like lying, like I took this model, as one of the available models, which we have, from different sources, like from books and so on, not from the, some clients, as we don't do those sharing, but here, for example, we see like use case satisfies a requirement, right? So it's not like good practice in general, use case refines requirement, right? Because it explains in the more details what user wanted, So use case can refine requirement. User needs comes as a, text-based, and then we capture in more formal way in the use case. And then refine is the relation which says that, this use case becomes part of this requirement, pretty much explaining in more formal way. So that could be the best practices to use refine. Could be also in another direction, but in that case, it would mean that, we created use cases. We described, system in the use cases as with all the details, especially those details comes, like here, for example, listen to amplified signal, right? And then hearing instrument user, right, works with the system, hearing instrument system, right, to implement this use case, to deliver this use case, listen to amplified signal, right? And there is another external actor, we captured here is a block, but sound environment, right? So maybe we should kind of, describe, environment in some way, like, for example, some sound environment, right? Some sound environment, right? So we can assign whatever icon. It would look nicer, than just a block, actor. And then here we have it, and then the whole details of the use cases, it's described in the, first of all, those scenarios, and that's like how user wants that it would happen, and that's like completely aligned with Agile, right? User stories, right? Those are scenarios pretty much. Could be multiple scenarios to achieve same use case, and then it should be like sunny day scenario, more alternative scenarios. So as we can see here, hearing instrument user turns on the instrument, then sound environment provides input sound, and then we get a signal to hearing instrument, amplify apply amplification to the signal, output applied signal, and then listen. And from the simulation side, we can run the use case model, as you can see here. And then we get, you know, those user interface dialogues where we can click on the buttons based on the user. So user has two use cases, right? So we can execute one or another and see how that will be performed. It's pretty much like checking that model is correct, but also from behavior side, and logic side, but also demonstrating that. So we can slow down this animation, as you see here, and then click on that. And you see the diagram automatically opens because we have this button here. And then it follows the path, right? So this path is quite primitive, you know, but you can imagine that we could have much more complicated the decisions with some other things, you know, in the loop. And here we ended this path, right? We could also add some extra things, for example, provide input sound, and we could actually control when we have those things as an input. For example, we can have accept event action here and say that we get as a signal input sound here. Actually, input sound. So this can control when we will get it. You know, could be multiple things that we get in the use case at different order, and you know, you don't need to make it one flow only, you know, in the same scenario. You can have it like this. Let's go here, and this one is okay. So now it will stop at this moment, you know, and we'll wait until we'll decide, you know, that this is an input which we want to send. So we can send it here. As you can see here, then it continues execution. So it's kind of simple way. It's very straightforward. It does not require a lot of, you know, effort to build. It's pretty much whatever you already have in your use case description. You can just run it, right? So that was the first part of the simulation which we wanted to introduce for the system model validation, pretty much. So it's called validation because we validated our, you know, system will be based on your user needs, right? It's not like it's well designed, but it's actually just provides what user wants, right? And I see some questions. So the actor in the model seems to be modeled as a block. It can be modeled as a block, can be as an actor. Yes, it was as a block. Is this just from the best modeling practice from a point of view, or this is necessary for simulation? No, it's not necessary for simulation to work. It's just convenient because at some moment you want to say that your system works in an environment, right? And then you say like, okay, in that environment, we have some other parts, right, of the system. And an actor is not like really, for example, cannot have properties, cannot have interfaces. And you can introduce another block, you know, which will show that, you know, it has, you know, instead of actor used in the environment, you know, in the IBD internal block diagram or so on, but just kind of, you know, more convenient, and everything is almost the same, you know, like, but you can actually right click, refactor, convert to more elements, and actor doesn't support this replace to actor, but we can actually do like this. And then stop simulation, run again. And you can see here now this actor is doing the same, you know, as it was before, right? So it's from that perspective, definitely nothing different. And from other perspectives, also not so much, you know, just block is more powerful. And then when we assign the image, you know, it doesn't change a lot. Okay, so now let's talk about requirements compliance analysis when we go already to the architecture of the system, which we want to show that it satisfies those requirements which we come up like system requirements or component requirements. Then, then we do verification. We run scenarios, of system usage in different environments and so. And we want to check that requirements are always in the limit, right? Or we can even do model-based testing and then check that requirements are verified, So how to do it in most simple ways. So let's see from just compliance analysis. But first is that, requirement, even if it is system requirement, still is in text, right? So it's text, right, based. So system and, modeling tool should understand what we mean by it, So there are a few ways to do it, but pretty much it's formalization of requirement, right? So what you want, and we mostly can check the requirements compliance based on the, characteristics of the system, right? So like in this case, like power usage, hearing instruments shall use less than 1 milliampere of power. And you can extract, constraint here. You see like a model, which again refines, so because it describes in more details the same thing, right? In more precision, like X less than 1, right? Then this requirement is satisfied by the characteristic of the system power usage, right? So now we would run the system through different environments, different scenarios. Those scenarios could be test cases, and then we would check that this is satisfied, right? So one way to formalize in this way. Another way is actually in Cameo, we have built-in natural language analysis engine, which gets even better and better. With next release will be a significant improvement where we extract from text the constraints. And as you can see, for example, less than should be converted to less than 1, right? Automatically, because the less than is recognized as a pattern. There is number after, and the property name is this one, right? Same here, for example. So you can take a look, less than 1. So charging time, this is the name of the property. Satisfy relation is treated as a connection which says that this property shall satisfy this requirement. So charging time should be less than 1 hour. That gives a lot of advantages. For example, you don't need to maintain, those constraints which are dynamic here. You can replace requirement by synchronizing with the external database and get different requirement coming in, and that will automatically work, for verification side. And this glossary which is used behind, you see like less than is customizable, so you can add your extra, expressions. And again, the next release, end of the year, will be much more powerful. So there will be a possibility to define, advanced expressions. Plus, it will have more expressions built in. Like, for example, shall be less than 1 hour, plus minus 0.5 or 0.2. It should be between 2 and 5. Something like that will be supported also. So now we have those satisfied relations, as you see, because this is the system requirements which shall be satisfied by the solution architecture. So it's different than it was user needs, right? And then we formalize them, with the modeling to explain what user wants, right? Here we actually have already system requirements, and we want to say, okay, this is the architecture which will satisfy like completely from interface perspective, from characteristics perspective, from functional perspective, and then we'll optimize to show that, this is best architecture. So that's what we show with those satisfied relations. And we need to be very precise to show what value property satisfies those characteristics-based requirements, like charging time, power usage. Otherwise, they will not work for this automatic compliance analysis. If we'll just say whole block satisfies, which would be correct, but not precise enough. Now this glossary is turned off automatically, so you can turn it on for any project. Going to options, glossary, general, use requirements term glossary. So if you haven't saw, underlined text, as we can see here in the model of requirements, it's because this glossary is by default turned off. So you can turn it on from here. Then the text will be recognized as a constraints. And it will not affect anything bad in the general, project. It's just like interpretation of the text. And then we can run, simulation of the model in different scenarios and track compliance, in the charts, in the user interface, in the, verification variables dialog. We'll see green when it is satisfied requirement for those properties which are attached to requirements, and red if it is not. So let's go to the demo. So here we have this model. So we have those requirements. Those requirements are for the volume user interface. Volume interface shall support volume adjustment from 0 to 100%. That's for the port as an interface, then sound interface again for port. Then those two are for those characteristics: charging time, right? Charge time, hearing instrument charging from 20% to 100 shall take less than 1 hour, and this is hearing instrument shall use less than 1 milliampere of power. So now if we will run this model, we get immediately here this verification. At all times it is possible to see that those levels of properties are correct. And by default, we got them from the default values, as you see, charging time 0.8 and this 0.9. You can change it here, during simulation. When we execute the model, you can change it here. And it will recalculate all the parametrics, will run behaviors based on that. Everything will work. You can actually input the values during execution. Also, we can run, through the time. If you will click on this one, this will execute behavior side of the model. Then the clock will start ticking. Here we have this clock ticking. By default, it's in milliseconds. And then we can show time series charts here. And here we have this chart running. And we can replace like values to see that, changing. Because I don't have any behavior here in the model, so I just have this manually changing, but that would not be much different. So here we have this moved, and you see like in this moment, this requirement was not satisfied. And there could be multiple requirements, multiple properties tracked, we would see which requirement was not satisfied when, and as you see here, everything comes from this underlined part of the requirement. Power usage less than 1. If we'll change now here to 2, let's say requirement was updated. Now power usage less than 2. So constraint also get updated. And that gives, kind of simplicity of usage of the constraints, because otherwise we would need to track where is the constraint, where it is used, maybe even, but just at least constraint needs to be updated manually. Here we get this automatically. What else? Yeah, so when you have this underlined, you can also click on this open glossary. So you see the glossary here. This glossary is saved as read-only. You can create your own glossary table from here. Glossary table. And this glossary table is in general very good thing to manage your glossaries. Those glossaries could be anything pretty much. Could be blocks, could be signals, or could be glossary items. Like here, for example, we could have them glossary items. I can name this glossary, for example, my hearing device terms, and it has this, and then I add, you see, like, can just copy paste, those terms from Excel, and let's say like 1, 2, 3, and so on, right? And now this one is a definition, not necessarily even for this, constraint based, right? But also just in general, we have this glossary as a very good thing, because this glossary, I think it is it used automatically? Switched on, I think, yeah. So if I will start typing, 1, you see it recognized as a term. If I move mouse over, now it shows that it comes from this my hearing device terms glossary, right? And I see the definition of that term, right? And if I will mistype, it shows that it's already not in the glossary. So if I have any terms, it is very easy to add them here and to use them from the glossary. Then we will not do mistakes, when write requirements. Also, we can easily add new terms, like, for example, 5, right? Like lowercase, let's say, right click, select, right click, add to glossary. And now 5 is also in the glossary, you see? New term added into the glossary. So same as it was here, used from the glossary, which we use like for requirements terms, requirements, compliance analysis, right? We can actually use the glossary for our needs. It's actually the same glossary concept used for requirements, compliance analysis. As you see here, we created new glossary, and the 5 is added now, like definition 1, 2, 3, right? And again, you could just copy paste, from Excel to this, and you have it in the model. Just the one thing, what makes requirements constraints glossary instead of this regular glossary is the stereotype. So if you will apply specific stereotype, it is like a requirements something. Requirements terms. I think this one is the dedicated stereotype for the glossary, which will be, used as a glossary to replace the text and requirements to the constraints. And then your glossary will become, you can then put the logic. So yeah, so this pretty much how it works. And if you don't like glossaries, you can also turn them off here. And then you don't need to do anything, but you will not see underlined text when the glossary is turned off. So it's turned off using the glossary in the project. Yeah, so just saving, reopening will solve the problem. Will be no underlined text. Okay, so let's come back. So where we can find more information, so check the MBSE execution channel, where you will find on requirements verification, validation, model-based testing, and other topics. It's actively updated channel, so you can give a feedback. Maybe this video does not exist, but we can try to prioritize it. So now what's coming next is the visualization. It's already available, actually, all those things what you see here. So HTML5 widgets for the internal block diagram to show it as a, dashboard, ability to see properties on the parts, and property values changes, states on the parts, when they change, to see the track it, ability to change the values from those widgets, and the widget library is available. You can just drag them, to an IBD and use them, connect to properties. Then ability to see token number of tokens, and stream and rate assigned, to the parameters of the activities, which is kind of important for more advanced behavior analysis and modeling. We can see, for example, like 3 tokens are here, right, waiting to be used. And now from the requirements perspective, so as you can see here, now we will have, just in the next release, right, pretty much end of the year, right, the preview version is already available. You can request it. We will have more advanced patterns for requirements, natural language analysis, like between this and this, you see, it will be recognized as a constraint. The tire shall have 22 plus minus 2 inches rolling diameter will be recognized as a constraint. And more advanced, glossary, as you see here, with the expressions can be customized in more powerful way for the glossary. And then another thing which was requested, oh, thank you so much, 10 minutes, which was requested for many, I would say, releases, almost, like maybe a few years already, the requirements verification table, where we would see in requirements verification table, and it's already, this end of the year release, refresh 2, where we will see requirements status based on the, simulation results. We'll see what is the value of this, as you saw, for example, like we have, you know, power limit, right? So what was the actual value? But in requirements table, what was the value? What is the boundary coming from the property, which requirement satisfies? So the boundary, the actual value, and what is the margin, like -10 here. You see, like it is not meeting this margin, right? And this one is in the margin, right? 10. So this will be, also it could run, you know, based on different iterations of the simulation. So you can save as instance and then use the instance here to set the context based on which simulation we show those results. So we can show like historical results. We can show always same results if we save to same instance and so. So very requested capability, and is already again coming in end of the year. And margin can be shown also in variables panel. Watch window for selected variables. So this one is like just usability improvement, right? To have selected variables to watch them. And then one thing for the trade studies, because we are going that path quite significantly, I was discussing this future plan to have PLE-based trade studies, automatic trade studies. As you know, we have automatic-based trade studies based on alternative architectures based on generalization, coming from different instances, coming from Excel. Now also we'll have property swap. So you could set the minimum, maximum, and step for the value property instead of assigning the default value. If you will set this, then you run, it will generate the inputs and will do the calculations based on the inputs. So it will run multiple times. You see like executing alternatives, 2,400 alternatives, because we said that properties will change based on that step. So you can have multiple properties as an input and then optimize on some output, you know, look for that output. In that area, we work also with Process Composer, some optimization tool like SysML Model Center to have like artificial intelligence algorithms to find the optimal, you know, outputs faster than just running through all the possible configurations, right? That's actually dedicated algorithms used for that. Okay, so thank you for the time today, and any questions?
Anybody has any questions or topics for Saulis? Just unmute your microphone, turn your video on, and start a conversation.
Yeah, I put it on the chat. I hope I'm audible here. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the integration you mentioned in the beginning between different requirements management tools and the NoMagic. So to my knowledge, there was already something in the Dassault tool suite called Innovia requirements or something like that. Isn't there already a coupled thing in the tool suite for this?
Yes, so based on same data hub as we have with Doors, I'm saying this is as a good thing because, you know, it's very successful with Doors. We have also with Innovia, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, available, you know, you can use Innovia as requirement source.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the great presentation, by the way. I really liked it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Any others? Saulis, do you have any insight of how many other medical companies are using tools like this? Do you have any idea how pervasive this is becoming?
It's like third domain, you know, like you would say, like first of all is like defense and aerospace, right? It's like a huge market, right? But then, you know, automotive is almost all automotive companies are using, you know, but some are doing pilots, some are like 5 years in the, you know, adoption, like for example, Ford, right, is even more than 5 years. Very successful adoption, you know. Like, you know, like how else you will model your major, you know, new models on, you know, service-based, you know, software-based, you know, system architectures, right? So, and then healthcare devices is the next one, you know, like getting more attention, you know, from the company perspective. Almost all of them are clients, I would say us or some other company, but, you know, like it's step by step getting more advanced.
May I add a little bit from here? Yeah, I'm working for Philips. We are using Cameo for MBSE.
Good to hear. Thank you, Faye.
Yeah.
What the good thing, is the regulators. I mean, like those standard organizations, they are now start to model requirements. So that I was surprised, because this is like, for them is like right now, hot topic. So I thought it's always was the showstopper for the adoption, really, because, in defense is like requested by, like common practices, and automotive is common, problem of the system engineering getting out of control, and in healthcare it was like, okay, you do all those complex things, like it's mission critical software and hardware, right? But it was always, requirements coming from, like PDF, so how you make it model based, when the requirements are in PDF. But it's getting better.
Yeah, or worse if it's just a scanned PDF from an acquisition.
Yeah, so definitely.
Which you can't even, so you have to manually transcribe the requirements.
Yeah,
one by one.
Yeah, that would be just the next step, to make it text-based, just common requirement repository, right? Nothing advanced, right? Like hierarchical, traceable, like you can do change impact and so on, but then next would be like to have, like, for example, reference architecture of if you're talking about the system which you are describing, regulations. So please have a sample of that system which would satisfy those regulations, and then someone would just change it. And, this is the path we see it's going right now, and then we could be like even automated kind of check, if we'll go next step.
Yeah, I might need to add this regulatory a little bit, Saudi. So we are talking about a little bit decoupled modularization as well to really enable this, like the reference architecture, the platforms, and the modules here. And I think Cameo is really good in, especially in this product line engineering, which is popped up a little bit automotive. That's very much useful also for our domain, as far as I can see nowadays.
Yeah, modularization and even variance is still a challenge in the medical device industry. I mean, it wasn't too long ago when we introduced product line engineering and to manage, variance, but still it's not as you would see in other industries. So that's really hard to sell. I had this conversation with my manager, and I tried to explain to him the importance of doing proper architecture systems to be able to identify modularization and reusability. And he always asks, "That's great for long term, but how will we convince the teams to start looking into this, to put their effort in the short term while they're developing something that needs to get out of market as soon as possible?" It's always been a challenge with the teams I work with, because I need their time to help me develop the modularization so I can have that information, those models, at hand for the future. But they're busy trying to get the job done on what the market needs right now. So it's a journey, I would say. We'll get there.
Yeah, regulators should ask for models that would solve the problem.
Indeed, but one of the MBSE benefits is reducing the time to market. So maybe we need to sell MBSE from this point and saying that you will have more time to spend on future improvement, and platforms and modularization is one of them. Maybe that's the way to sell things to.
Yeah, I try to do that. I try to use the example that what National Instruments does. I don't know if you ever work with their hardware. It's very modular. I mean, you can just grab a PXI chassis and put a whole bunch. You can make a new system out of grabbing modules and cards and make a new data acquisition system. So I try to use examples from other industries to show what's the benefit of modularization. And they get it. It's just that I think what happens is a lot with medical devices that there's a lot of acquisitions. So each startup that you face has their own way of solving the world, or it's not like they share there's no marketplace, you know, where for startups to kind of share their IP or things like that. But so you're always facing with like a very different group of people who have solved something with a different lens, and it's like starting all over again. It's really hard to deal with that, and that's what medical devices are prone to. At least what I face is that acquisitions is just makes you kind of have to start again, and it's really hard to fit an incoming device into a, let's say, an existing product line. Yeah, probably an automobile industry is more easier because, you know, you have pretty much they've been dragging through many decades, you know, a framework of things. So, but oh well.
Yeah, Saulius knows much better, I guess, as far as I can follow from MBSE execution YouTube. But from my own experience, if you can define nice form fit function models, interfaces in your reference architecture, any kind of acquisition can also have a look, quickly understand where they need to conform. I think models are the best way to also get new people on board for your architecture, for your new domain. I see MBSE is maybe the one and only enabler in these stories, communication, faster and more granular.
Yeah.
Any other questions or topics for Saulius? Well, thank you, Saulius, for that presentation.